Wild Review. I'm the Wild Reviewer, and today I'm going to review a thing. Have you ever given a review on something and years later you wonder if what you said still holds up? Well, I have! Hi there, I'm the Wild Reviewer, or at least I was told that's who I am, and this is Rewild, a sequel series to an old review show I used to do called The Wild Review. It ran for 6 seasons from 2015 to 2018, and some of the things that I've talked about, I have different opinions on. Or maybe I don't. That's the whole point of this series. If you are watching this, then that means you are joining me on an adventure as we are going to take a journey into my past to see if what I said in a previous Wild Review episode still holds up. We're gonna make comments about how young I used to look and stupid I used to sound sometimes. It kinda depends on what I was talking about. So, unless you have somewhere else important you need to be, which I highly doubt, seems like you're gonna be taking a journey with me into the past. This is the Wild Review Rewild.
Wild like wild.
I thought the name was cool. Hello, welcome to the Wild Review and the Wild Review, and welcome back to another episode of Rewild. On today's exciting adventure into the past, we are going to take a look at the episode that I made about the Dr. Seuss films. We all know the Dr. Seuss films, right? I'm pretty sure we're all aware of the Dr. Seuss films that have come out. There have been a total of 5, with one of them being a remake. We've had How the Grinch Stole Christmas, The Cat in the Hat, Horton Hears a Who, The Lorax, and just a few years ago we got the animated Grinch film. We are supposed to be getting an animated Cat in the Hat film, essentially a remake of the Mike Myers film, or maybe a reboot, maybe a retelling of that story. This is mostly because the idea of adapting the Dr. Seuss films has been going forward for a while, but after the live action films, which is the main thing that we're talking about today, after the live action films did somewhat interestingly at the box office both times, the Dr. Seuss Foundation, the company, whoever's behind the books, they made it very clear they no longer want any live action films done on their stories. They were referring more specifically to the Cat in the Hat film with Mike Myers, and I feel like I'm actually going to go into detail about these specific topics, so maybe I shouldn't say anything before we actually get into the video. So why don't we check out the video and see if what I'm planning on saying or what I've already just said is actually going to be discussed. This is a rewilding, we are rewilding the Dr. Seuss live action films. Rewilding is not a word. Dr. Seuss is probably one of the best known children's book writers and artists to this day. His stories have been read to so many children over the past few years, and they're some of the best stories to tell when the kids go to sleep. Some of the best books that he's written are some classics known as The Cat in the Hat, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Horton Hears a Who, One Fish, Two Fish, and a whole bunch of other books. I remember being read the Dr. Seuss books before I went to sleep. Those were some fun times. I had to be really little. I want to say maybe 5. But I remember the books were read to me by my parents. Not at the same time, but I'd have my mom read some, and then my dad would read another, and they'd read to me as I attempt to go to sleep. But I never fully went to sleep. I stayed up and listened to all the stories. I wasn't one of those kids that fell asleep while a story was being told, which, now thinking about it, is kind of rude. Like, you fall asleep when you're getting bored. And that's not to say that when you go to sleep you're bored. Everybody's just tired. This sentence didn't come out the way I thought it would. I guess a better way to make money off of what he's created is by turning his books into movies. Some people didn't like that idea. To this day, there are only 4 books that have been turned into movies. 2 of them are animated and 2 of them are live action. A fun fact for all of you, this is one of the earliest ideas I had when I thought about doing the Wild Review. In fact, I actually wanted to do this back in season 1. This is a season 3 episode. I just kept pushing it back because I had a hard time figuring out if I was going to review the movies or if I was just going to talk about them like I ended up doing now, because I knew the live action films were kind of a big deal in various different ways. There are people that absolutely love these films, but then you have those that hate the films. And then there's just a middle group that's like, these films are horrifying. Like, if you found the films horrifying, they go into both categories. They can be horrifying to the point where it ruins your viewing joy, but it could also be horrifyingly great. So it took me a while to figure out what exactly I wanted to discuss when it came to these films, and obviously I found something. It was obvious that I was just going to talk about them. That would have been a very long review had I done both films. One of them is 2.5 hours. It's amazing that these two books that children grew up with have been turned into what people call, how people say, garbage. Well, in other people's eyes. In my eyes, these films aren't really garbage. The Grinch is a classic holiday film that's played every year on ABC Freeform's 25 Days of Christmas. And The Cat in the Hat is just an attempt to turn a classic childhood story into something bigger. To this day, I still like the films. I do like the live-action Grinch, and I really enjoy the Cat in the Hat film. I've said this a number of times. I mean, I've reviewed the live-action Grinch film as part of the Christmas miniseries I did, along with the animated one, the both animated ones, the TV special and the new one that came out. And I think it's a classic. I know some people just prefer the 30-minute television special, but I think both of them have gained an audience big enough that they both can share the Christmas TV slot. Like, I'll admit, the live-action Grinch film didn't really need to happen, and it is very long, and there is stuff that not only is a little inappropriate for kids, being that this is a film based on a kid's book, but also there's just stuff that's not needed. But it's still a really enjoyable film. And I think Jim Carrey does an amazing job in the role. It's really fascinating to also listen to the behind-the-scenes stories that he has when doing this film. The fact that he had to get into the makeup so many times, it took so long to even put the whole suit on and the contacts. Like, Jim Carrey is an amazing actor for that. He's not my favorite actor, but when I think of actors that have to put on so much makeup, essentially a whole bodysuit, and they need things plucked in, and it's like complete torture behind the scenes. I think it was 6 or 7 hours, maybe even 8, to put the whole suit on. I think of Jim Carrey before anybody else. And the Cat in the Hat film, I grew up with that film. I actually saw that one before the Grinch film, and I really like it. It's funny. I can see why people are upset about it, but I thought it was really fun. I thought it was goofy. It was a little meta. It broke the fourth wall a few times, but it was in an enjoyable way. Ever since I saw how the cat costume was made for him and how his face is just painted white, I could see the lining where the costume stops. It's a little more noticeable than when Jim Carrey was the Grinch, but I really like Mike Myers as the Cat in the Hat. I thought it was enjoyable. I still enjoy it to this day. I haven't seen it in a while, but I really enjoy it. I know I already talked about my top 5 favorite films, but if we are talking about my top 10, or, I'll give it even my top 20, it would be somewhere in the top 20. I can't say if it would be in the top 10, but it's definitely in my top 20 of favorite films. So before I start, let me just remind everybody that both The Grinch and The Cat in the Hat have had 30-minute television specials. And they have kept true to the story that they came from. And then some guy was like, hey, let's make these stories longer in movie forms and have Jim Carrey and Michael Myers play the two iconic characters, which is exactly what they've done. So the one thing I have to say about this movie is that it is very colorful and does say Christmas. I watch this film every year at Christmas, and I enjoy watching it, but something that people kind of get a little pissed at and annoys them a little about this movie is the movie itself. The amount of length the film spans to. Like I said, The Grinch already has a television special, going at about 30 minutes, maybe even 25 minutes. This movie's 2 hours and 30 minutes long. Notice that the book is also less than 100 pages. The Grinch story can be told in the matter of maybe 10 minutes, and they take about
2 hours to actually get to the story. Literally, the whole plot of the movie is at the end.
One of the biggest issues I know for a fact that a lot of people had with these films was the amount of unnecessary plot that was given to these 30-page stories. The TV special of The Grinch basically followed the book. The book served as a transcription of what the TV special was. It just focused on this creature stealing Christmas. The movie added a lot to that, and it kind of gave it a bit of a moral and a pretty interesting story, if I have to admit that. I do generally like what kind of the message is about the film, and it's also something that I think, ironically enough, does right when you have those Christmas is in danger kind of stories, especially when you include Santa in the story and something happens that prevents him from delivering the gifts. Do you know how many times I actually forget that Santa is in The Grinch, like the Jim Carrey Grinch? He's referenced in both the TV special and the new Grinch film, but we get a little glimpse of him in the Jim Carrey film, which is something I always forget about. Ironically enough, while he is in it, he doesn't play a role at all. He delivers gifts like he should. But at the very end, it's the dad of Cindy Lou that makes it very clear to everybody that, yeah, all of our things were taken, but it's still Christmas. Like, it's still here.
It's got a nice moral to it as well. They slip in a moral with these Dr. Seuss live-action films. And the moral in this one was, you know, it's not all about what you get, all the prizes you get, all the competitions. As long as you're together, you know, that's what Christmas is. Yeah, that's the whole point behind the film, and I think it's pretty cool.
It's now dawning on me that that's the moral of the Grinch story entirely. I, for some reason, just thought it was only in the Jim Carrey film. That's the whole thing with the Grinch story, and I really like that it definitely showcases that, yeah, we don't have all these things, but the day still came. It's still Christmas, just because we don't have new presents or the decorations. It's still the 25th. You can't stop the 25th from not coming. And that's something that a lot of Christmas films get wrong. They always say, oh, then Christmas isn't gonna come. Put Cindy Lou's dad in that film, and he will make it very clear, you can't hurt Christmas. 'Cause it's here. That's not a full line of what he says. He does say you can't hurt Christmas. I just don't remember what he fully said. How did I get on this topic? Oh. The Jim Carrey film extends that whole idea. It showcases contests and the holiday cheermeister and ugly sweaters and prizes and stuff and the gift exchange. It like elaborates on all that. So I don't think all those little story elements harmed the film in any way. But with that said, it is relatively long, and I know one of the main problems with the Grinch story, both the Jim Carrey and the new one, is they explained how he hates Christmas, which is supposed to be a secret. The Cat in the Hat film is much shorter. It's not 2 hours. It's an hour and a half, and I believe it's been a really long time since I read The Cat in the Hat, but I believe it just focuses on the cat coming in, having fun with these two kids. Thing 1 and Thing 2 come out, and then they clean up, and then they leave. The Cat in the Hat film does something very similar that the Jim Carrey film does, and that's going into more detail with our main characters. The kids, what are they? Who are they? Who are the kids? Conrad? Conrad and Sally? The two children have certain personality traits, and the cat basically teaches them it's okay to be out of your comfort zone or have a little fun here and there, and you know, they incorporate the story with that sort of moral. I still like the Cat in the Hat film, but I know a lot of people don't. I know a lot of people see it as an inappropriate piece of media. I don't care, it still makes me laugh.
The rest of the 2 hours is just focusing on his backstory, why he hates Christmas and all the people around him and his childhood. And then they have this like holiday cheermeister thing, a big party and stuff that has to get him even more aggravated about Christmas. And we gotta focus on these characters and these characters, and it's a lot for people.
Yeah, giving him a reason to hate Christmas is nice. It gives a little backstory to the Grinch, but we didn't need it. Like, I know I just said this, but we literally don't need it. I think I would have been fine if we never got a Grinch backstory that went into why he hates Christmas. Why couldn't he just be born and not like the holiday? Nobody needs to know why. That still doesn't give you the answer. If he's just there and he just doesn't like it, that's already the answer.
So really, The Grinch wasn't the movie that kind of got people off their seats aggravated because of their childhood being turned into a big mess. It's The Cat in the Hat that did that.
You made a rhyme. I don't know if that was intentional. Maybe it was.
A lot of people do not like this movie. In fact, it's got a very low rating. In fact, this is the movie that got the Seuss company's attention to stop production on any further live-action movies. So, unlike The Grinch, this movie isn't 2 hours and 30 minutes long. It's actually about an hour and 30 minutes, maybe an hour and 20. But it does keep to the story's original plot very quickly. We get to the cat's arrival about 20 minutes in, and the story stays true to where it originally came from, but there are a few things that people don't like about this film. For one thing, Michael Myers does a good job playing the cat. He is very goofy, but the cat's personality is a bit too goofy in this film, and they mostly saw the cat being the serious goofy guy. Like, he still was kind of goofy and mischief, but in the 30-minute special, and even in the book, he was a bit more intelligent than how this cat would be in this film.
The cat is a bit goofy. Like, he's too goofy compared to his book counterpart. If I have to give the film anything to critique a little, along with the cutout of the face, I will admit he is a bit too goofy-ish. In the book, the cat is always seen as the teacher. Like, he doesn't mess up a dress and then go, well, I'll fix that, and open a big red box and let 2 miniature people out to wreck the whole entire house for nothing. That doesn't really give an example of sophistication like we're supposed to think the cat is. So he is a bit too goofy.
I don't mind children's content involving a little humor for the adults, but if it's at a right pace. There is a lot of things in this movie that can make this film get rated PG-13, maybe even R, because I don't think this is a very safe film for kids. Maybe a few scenes, but half of the whole movie I do not think is appropriate for a young age.
Me being the age that I am, I gotta be perfectly honest, I actually like the inappropriate stuff in this. I think this should have been rated PG-13. Not rated R, but definitely PG-13. It does bother me a little that this was aimed for children, especially very young children, so obviously stuff like the dirty hoe bit and the constant swears that are hinted at the film, and all the various other inappropriate jokes that I will not reference. To me, it's funny. To a parent with their 3-year-old child, I could see it as a problem. The kitchen scene, though, that's my favorite part of the film. The kitchen scene is my absolute favorite part, and I think it best displays Mike Myers' goofiness. Mike Myers does a good job overall. I like The Cat in the Hat.
This movie got panned so badly, and it just destroyed the Dr. Seuss industry for live-action films. That's now why there are animated films. In fact, because of these 2 films, they're now remaking The Grinch and Cat in the Hat into CGI films. We're gonna see how that turns out, I guess.
While I haven't heard anything about the new Cat in the Hat film, of course we all know that I have seen the new Grinch film. I think I've said enough about the Grinch. I'm curious, though, to know what happened to the Cat in the Hat film. I know there was plans for there to be a live-action Cat in the Hat sequel, but they chose not to go down that route. Seuss's widow, Audrey Giselle, was also critical of the film, decided not to allow any further live-action adaptations. Alright, there we go. And they canceled The Cat in the Hat Comes Back. See, so they were supposed to do a live-action reboot. Oh, Tim Allen was supposed to be the cat, and he dropped because it conflicted with the Santa Claus 2 filming. I keep forgetting Dakota Fanning's in this film. She was really little. In March 2012, an animated remake was announced by Universal and Illuminations, but never came to fruition. In 2018, Warner Brothers animated group announced an animated reboot was again in development. Okay, so let's scroll down here. Let's see what this says. March 2012, a computer-animated Cat in the Hat remake was announced by Universal and Illumination following the success of the Lorax. But it never came. On January 24th, 2018, it was announced that Warner Brothers Animation picked up the rights for the animated Cat in the Hat film as a part of the creative partnership with Seuss. Okay. So where is it? Is it coming? Are we getting it soon? I'm gonna get to the age where if I go to see these films by myself, people are gonna start questioning me. Well, I guess we're gonna have to wait a little bit for the Cat in the Hat film, as nobody knows what's going on with that production. I'll be here waiting, though. For now, though, we have come to the end of another episode of Rewild. My final thoughts on the Dr. Seuss live-action films. Well, I think I've already said it a number of times, what I think about these live-action films. You have to remember, in Season 3 of the Wild Review, when this video was made, I was still putting on a little act. This was 2016, I believe. So what I said is mostly still accurate and true to how I thought about these films, but I mostly gave some facts about how the public saw these two films. If I have to be very honest, for the final time, I think now they are fine. I still watch The Grinch, and I still watch The Cat in the Hat whenever I get a chance to watch it. Whatever anybody else thinks about them, that's their opinion, and they're allowed to have it. The animated films, however, are a completely different story. I do not like the animated Grinch film, the new one, I should clarify. And when it comes to Horton Hears a Who and the Lorax, I've seen Horton Hears a Who, don't have a full opinion on it, because I actually don't know if I ever saw the middle. I saw the beginning and I saw the end, but I think there's a chunk that I actually missed. And I've never seen the Lorax. That's it. And that's my discussion on these two different films, and that's my episode of Rewild. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, give me a like, or you don't have to if you don't like me. I won't be offended. If you'd like to check out this episode that I reviewed today, you can click the link in the description. It'll bring you to the episode of the Wild Review that I just watched, as well as a few other links that are down there, including one of them, which is the Grinch episode I talked about earlier. You can also check out the other Rewild episodes. There's a few of them by now. Also, leave me your suggestions for any other Rewild episodes you'd like me to do. Any other Wild Review episodes I should look back at? Let me know. Maybe I'll look at them. Maybe, if I feel like it. That's gonna do it for today's episode of Rewild. I'll see you next week, where the same thing will happen next week, except I'll be looking at something very different. Thanks again for watching The Wild Review. I'm The Wild Reviewer, and you just saw me review a thing.
Wild like wild.